way of looking at, evangelism. Because sometimes when you think about evangelism, it just puts the fear of God in people, or the fear of, oh, I can't do that. And it really doesn't need to be that. I think some of the years that I was most effective in evangelism sharing was when one beggar found bread and shared with someone else where they found that bread. And that was in Jesus Christ. And it was natural. And then I wasn't worrying about my words and how I said it. It was just, look at what Jesus did for me. And it's a joy to share. And it doesn't need to be, like it said in the prayer, that long face. So let's pray, because Simon is here to teach us, to give us some skills that should help empower us and make us not feel intimidated to speak that word when the Lord gives us opportunity. So let's pray. Father God, we are delighted to be your servants, your children, your people. We are all the chosen people, those that put our trust in Jesus Christ. And so we thank you that we get to share your praises with other people. It's not a duty, it's our delight. And we thank you for the extreme privilege of cooperating with you in your vineyard. Mm-hmm. And we thank you for your presence here with us. We thank you that Simon has come all the way from the UK to give us some skills that would help to equip us so that we wouldn't be threatened or intimidated, but we would have a word aptly spoken at the right time. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So this is Simon Lisak. I hope I said that right. No. I've been practicing that all day. Say it again.
Well, when you spelled it.
Lisak.
There you go.
L-I-S-S is Liss.
Liss, okay.
Lisak.
See, I never did good in phonetics either.
Well, I said Lisak when I said it earlier today.
Same here, Lisak. So anyway, and he's here from the UK. He's the lead for UK Chosen People Ministries. Did I do all right?
Yeah, you did very good.
Now wait for class. So sit down. Yeah, I was going to sit. You sit. I'm sorry. What's that?
Is it?
I think so. Put them too close together.
No, we're running the mic because we're streaming this.
Oh, do you want? Okay. Let's have it near me, so.
Get out of the way.
Okay.
That's all I need.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, they're very loud, aren't they?
You can
Oh, it
fix
does
my
work.
TV for
Look at
me.
that. Okay.
You're being broadcast around the world right now.
What a frightening thought.
No pressure, though. Is it okay that he has that computer? Sometimes.
Yeah, it's actually fine.
some missionaries
No, it's fine. Oh, no. So, as you know, I'm not very good at keeping things quiet. It's not my natural gift. I was talking to Laura earlier and sharing this. Oh, I shared that thing with you. There was a pastor with me. He was telling me a story. I was talking to him, and he showed me this cartoon of this doctor talking to the patient, asking the patient whether obesity ran. Does obesity run in your family? The doctor asks, and the patient says, "No one runs in my family." And because it was in front of me, and because Laura rang at exactly the same time, it seemed obvious to me that I would tell her this thing because it was funny. And then Laura mentioned to me that it might not have been that clever, because what if she had been 3 times larger than that? Then the joke might not have gone down so well, and David might have been ringing saying, "Well, unfortunately we've had to cancel your..." So, I think that's as good a way as any to introduce myself. So my name's Simon Lisak, and I'm English, which means I speak a bit like Nicky Gumbel, and I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish and I believe in Jesus like Nicky Gumbel. I don't know if you knew, but Nicky Gumbel is Jewish and he believes in Jesus. But Nicky Gumbel isn't a Jewish missionary. He wouldn't deny being from a Jewish family, but it isn't his main focus. And I'm not sure why it's mine. My family, so my dad is Jewish. They are Polish Holocaust survivors. And sometimes when I speak in church and I give my testimony and I talk about being Jewish, there's a line of people at the end of the service who want to tell me that I'm not Jewish. Hilarious. I don't know why. They don't want to criticize the sermon or praise me or do anything. They want to explain to me that I'm not really Jewish. Because in the Jewish tradition, it's the mother that counts. And this is going to just begin to open up for you, I hope, how far you tend to think of Jewish people as being kind of religious and maybe knowing the Old Testament better than you and blah, 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 blah. But just understand the principal identity. If someone says to you, are you Jewish? If I ask you, are you Jewish? And you say yes, my next question will be, is your mother Jewish? If you say no, I say you're not Jewish. That's the way that Rabbinic Judaism works. Rabbinic Judaism works that way. And when you say to people, it's confusing. Please explain to me how a faith that claims to be based on the Bible, which is all patriarchal genealogies, has become based on female, on the woman. It's not. It's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Last time I checked. No offense to the ladies in the room, because you're almost in the majority. But nonetheless, that's the way it works. So ask them, why? Nobody knows. The reason was because Jewish people have been persecuted in exile for a long time, is that there was a decision made to, in order to protect the identity of any child born to a Jewish mother, that child would be considered Jewish, regardless of the identity of the father. It was never designed, and this is like in the Middle Ages, it was never designed as an excluding thing, it was an inclusive thing. But that's been lost, and I spent many years arguing with rabbis on the street about my Jewish identity. Being half Jewish is like being half pregnant, for example. How does that work? Because if you can explain that to me, I'm in there. Fine, I'll understand. So that's my Jewish half. My Gentile half, I don't know which half is which, by the way. I can't never been able to disentangle it. I think the talking part is the Jewish from the hands. There's a joke that says, how do you shut a Jewish person up? You might need this at the end, at 8 o'clock, so you can go to your board. Time's hands. My mother's family, Roman Catholic on one side, Protestant on the other. The couple meet, they fall in love, they go to the priest. Priest, will you marry us? What, to him? No. Then they go to the Protestant and they say to the vicar, will you marry us? To her? No. So they had to move to a different town and pretend to be Church of England. And then they said, great, we'll marry you. So on one side I'm half Roman Catholic and half Protestant. On the other side I'm half Jewish, but it doesn't really count according to the rabbis. Hello. I grew up, my dad was a Holocaust survivor. They had a factory in Sosnowiec. We don't look very Jewish. We keep our hands still. I've got blue eyes and a small nose. Sorry for the streaming. You know, I don't fit those stereotypes. My wife looks more Jewish than me. I don't know what Jewish looks like, personally speaking.
Where's your ephod?
I'm kind of telling this because almost the central thing that I want to tell you is very easy, is that no person, and certainly no Jewish person, is the same as another one. And a key linkage that uniquely you share with a Jewish person is the fact that you both believe that we are made in the image of God. And that is the thing that makes us so special. There are lots of things that are alive, but there's only us that are made in the image of God, and that's something you share with Jewish people. And I would almost certainly, I'm fairly confident that if you're talking to a Jewish person about stuff like that, they've never heard it from a Gentile's lips. They may have heard, they will have heard, in America they might have had a positive experience of Christianity, I don't know. But this idea that the ultimate part, our ultimate identity comes from the fact that we're his image bearers, his image bearers, that's the thing that provides you with a bridge to every single person, Jew or Gentile. And anyway, don't start going down that rabbit hole, Simon. So my family, my dad is the only son of a wealthy industrial family in a place called Sosnowiec. It's in Poland. The Germans come, the Nazis come and they invade Poland. We are kept alive because my grandfather was a metallurgist. And they needed steel makers, and so they were like, oh, he's not so Jewish anymore. And then they needed some other members of, a chemist. Oh, well, let's not worry so much about them being Jewish because we need chemicals. And so this happens. The Nazis consistently overlooked Jewishness when they needed certain skills. And so that's why I'm here. That's why my dad got here. So my mum and my dad meet. My dad had already been married once before, and he told her, his first wife, he told that he didn't want to have kids, so they separated. And later on, his wife married an Israeli and came to live in our house with me and my mum and my brother. When my dad, it is impossible to understand what it was like to be in the Holocaust. My dad was bipolar, manic depressive, Holocaust survivor. I think he didn't really have much of a chance mentally and emotionally as far as his predisposition and his experience. And so he was a bit of a car crash, and there are in our family 9 kids, 6 marriages just in that flat generation. And we all therefore grew up with this terrible fear of marriage and religion and being any kind of, what kind of a God could you believe in that could explain this situation? So my wife, as I say, she's brought up as a Roman Catholic. Her mum died when she was 14, shattered the family, and so she became very distant, shall we say, in her relationship with God. And then she met me, the half-Jewish, non-practicing atheist. So like I was half-Jewish, I'd never really thought about it. I'd never thought one way or the other of it. I didn't want to say I was Jewish because I thought, well, I need to explain. So I always felt half Jewish. And then we had kids, and Felix, the big one who's been running around, we needed to get him into a good local school. So what you do if you want to get your kids into a good local school in England is you pretend to be some form of religious person. I was not pretending to be Jewish. That was way too hard. So I said to my wife, you're good at being Roman Catholic. You can go and do that. See, because these are my Judeo-Christian heritage, high moral. You go and be a fake Roman Catholic. Anyway, she was, because I had been to I went to a christening with her, and she suddenly stand up, sit down, said all these funny things, and I was like, what on earth? Who is this person? What? And she said, and after I said, what was all that about? She said, oh, well, that's just what you do. And you go, is it? Weird. So anyways, I said to her, you go to church and be a fake. I mean, you go to church to get Felix into school, because you're Roman Catholic and you know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm not going to church. Anyway, she was rubbish. And then we went to a dinner party. There was a drunk vicar who said really mad things about his family. He said some really mad things about his family. And so the next day I thought, well, it'd be interesting to see this guy preach. And that's the first time I actually went to church. Just to pick on the vicar. Because I thought, what on earth? And here is another. A lot later when I was in New York, I met a pastor called Brian Moll. And Brian Moll said to me, he said, whenever you're with an unbeliever, they are assessing whether if they believed what you believed, is their life going to be an upgrade or a downgrade? Whenever you are talking to an unbeliever, they are subconsciously wondering, if I believed what, I don't know what your name is, what Megan believes, Megan is teenager? Just 18. So when Megan is with her 18-year-old mates, and some of them are believers and some of them are not, the ones who are not believers are wondering, what would my life be like if I believed what Megan believed? And that, whether you're 18, 65, 40 or 42 or 35, it's the same. It doesn't matter. So you're in the battle, you're in there anyway. So another thing to think about with evangelism is you're already in it. You've already got skin in the game. The question is whether you're just going to be subbed off or carry on playing. And this, I guess, along with the image-making thing, then the second thing is probably, is there any real evidence that what you believe makes any difference to the way you approach your life? Because let me tell you a story. So because I'm half Jewish on the wrong side. Oh yeah, so I told you I'm not really Jewish. Okay, so what? So I get called to work with the ultra-Orthodox, the hats and the peyot, and I don't speak Yiddish and I don't speak Hebrew and I don't. Anyway, that's what I'm. But I'm really passionate about God and I really admire them for their zeal. They've got a zeal for righteousness, but in their own strength. It says so in the text. So I thought it's brilliant. Like if you're reading through Leviticus and you want someone to talk to, who do you go to if you're reading Leviticus and you want someone to talk to about it? No one in the church, I can tell you that. So what you do, maybe Dave, it's a long way for me to come, Dave. I didn't know Dave then. I didn't know if it was Dave or David. He said Dave, I think, when he shook my hand, he said Dave. Then he did a cool handshake with my son and made me feel like a real rubbish dad. Anyway. So I get called to ultra-Orthodox ministry. And the thing that you notice when you're in one of those communities is how their faith is how their lives are controlled by their faith, by what is in this case Hasidic Judaism. When they get up, they say a blessing. They put their shoes on, they say a blessing. They do everything. The rabbi chooses their wife, their job, their place in the thing where they live. All the decisions are made by the rabbis for them. If you're with one of these guys, it's going to be 30 seconds before they say, I can't do that because blah 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 blah. The rabbi in 1746 made a ruling. Conversely, how long does someone have to be around you before they notice that you are a Christian? got to get better at applying the Bible to our lives. And we've got to be more confident that the Bible has something to say about our lives. So in one of these books, I think it's in this one. Yeah, there's a little booklet called Presenting Messiah to Your Jewish Friend. I don't know if you, have any of you guys got Jewish friends?
Oh yeah, we have Jewish family members by marriage.
Jewish, okay, well, they might be friends.
And they're friends.
Okay, boom.
Yeah.
I don't like
So
to...
this is very interesting to me.
Right. So, here, your Jewish friend might tell you about a problem. This is the time to bring up an appropriate scripture or even pray with them. Super. Unless, of course, when you come across a problem, your mind goes blank and you can't think of any scriptures. Do you know why your mind goes blank? Because there's two reasons why, well, three reasons possibly. First one is that, like the paralytic man, our mouths are often the first thing to get paralyzed. So we need like 4 other people to carry us into a position where we have to witness before then Jesus gets us up and doing something. That's one thing. So we're scared. The next thing is we haven't really been doing that as a habit, in our discipleship, and then maybe we're just too apologetic. We think the words are ours, and we think we need to memorize them all. Do you know, like I think one of the best things is, like, if you don't know, it's like someone tells you a problem, you don't know the answer, but you can at least say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure there must be a proverb. Let me, like, and I think there's a proverb like that says something like, I'll look it up, bless you, and I'll look it up and I'll find it for you. It might help. Training over. You can all do that. What's so intimidating about that? When, I think because we, all of us, are a little bit too program-driven. Is that an American way of talking? Does that make sense? We're going to Israel, and we're going to see this and this and this and this and this. And along the way, we're going to insert a day where we do some evangelism. We're going to tell Jewish people about Jesus. And if we tell enough people, eventually, one of them might believe. Oh, good luck. I've been doing it for 12 years. I've handed out more leaflets, worn more T-shirts, done everything from like right in your face to kind of relationship building. And I have learned in all that actually I think Jesus is more interested in my discipleship than he is the results of my evangelism. And that's taken a whole load of pressure off me, and I hope it will take a whole load of pressure off you. To give you an example, I told you I do like ultra-Orthodox stuff, and there's another mission called CWI, another Jewish mission, and they have a summer school, and they brought some people to an Orthodox area. And my job was to just work my way down the line, taking them out. Because I got into this talking to people thing after doing book tables when no one came to talk to me. And I got so frustrated I went for a walk. And I looked so frustrated that actually a Jewish man said to me, what's up? I said, I said, you don't want to know. He said, no, really, what? I say, I'm a missionary, I want to talk to Jewish people about Jesus. And I'm standing on the table, it's just not working. I had quite an interesting conversation about Jesus after that. And it amazed me. So anyway, on this CWI thing, I was taking people out. And I took like you and you and you, and then I got to you. I'm going to pick on you again, sorry. You look like, yeah. What's your name?
Dan.
Dan. So Dan, he's got like all these little trophies for Bible memorization in his bedroom. I'm hoping this isn't like a prophetic word. Okay, good. So he's got like all these trophies about memorization. So he knows and Dan would love these. He'd be handing these out at the back, saying to people, here look, here are 21 reasons to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Here are 27 messianic prophecies achieved just on the day he was murdered. And Dan would say, and I've been out telling everybody these things, because God's word doesn't go out without achieving the purposes for which it was sent. Like water on dry ground, it gets wet and stuff happens. Don't know if you've met anybody like Dan. So anyway, I went out with this person like that, talking to Orthodox people. So I say, look, I'm going to introduce you to them, and then you're going to talk to them. Okay, great. I said, this is how we're going to do it. Okay, great. And then I introduce them to a Jewish person, and they say, why don't you believe Jesus is Messiah? It says in Isaiah 53 that he was pierced for our transgressions. I think we talked about this. Maybe this isn't
Too high pressure.
Well, what about Jeremiah 31? Well, what about this new covenant that was Jeremiah's promise to the exiles, and recite it, and she recited it, Daniela. She recited it, and I think she did quite a few. I said to her, look, they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you're talking about. You're quoting like Daniel and Jeremiah and Isaiah and Zechariah and blah blah. I say, they don't know what you're talking about, and they think you're mad, and they just want to get away from you. So then we talked to somebody else, and do you know what she did? Exactly the same thing. I went back to the book table to the next Megan. Megan is a 26-year-old man who's partially sighted and can only hear a little bit in his left ear. He is standing with leaflets in the middle of an Orthodox area trying to hand leaflets about Jesus out. He can't see people very well, and he can't really hear people very well. He is not having any fun at all. So I said to him, would you like to come and talk to Jewish people about Jesus? He said yes. I said, come on then. So he held my arm, and we went round Stamford Hill, and I said, oh, excuse me, who haven't I put on you? Are you Megan's sister?
Mom. Sisters.
Still got a magic.
Give her a watch that.
Yeah. I say, this is my friend Megan. She's partially sighted, has terrible, she's only going to hear in one ear, but she's never spoken to a Jewish person. Would you mind if she asked you a few questions? Sure. Exactly. Boom. He had the best time. Because he had questions to ask Jewish people. And because of his disabilities, they couldn't say no.
Right. Because I have a problem with this hearing. But I'm not Jewish. I'm a dumb Polak. Oh, God.
It's supposed to illustrate a point, a relational point, about talk to the person that's in front of you. It's about if you don't have something that you need to learn, or something that you're curious about, how are you ever going to get engaged? That there is the one way of engaging: build the relationship, wait for the problem, insert the scripture, be surprised because the Jewish person will be like, "Oi, with the using the Bible into your like the liberal people that we were saying before. Like, why are you sticking so firmly to the Bible? Oh, but you're Jewish. Don't you know why I'm sticking so firmly to the Bible? No. Really? No. Oh. Fly fishing, I think. Not like machine gunning. very often conservative evangelical evangelism looks like machine gunning the water to try and catch fish. Or it's a big fat net dragged through, causing, you know, I have been the machine gunner and the dragger of the net. And always be ready to give a reason for your hope, but do it with gentleness and respect. And you do that in a relationship, if you value the relationship. And you do that with a person if you think, this isn't really about Jewish mission. Why am I just doing an evangelism training course? Is that okay? Yeah. The more we try, the more we try to divorce community, discipleship, and evangelism from each other, community, discipleship, and evangelism, as we separate those things into different functions, that's why we find it so difficult. Because, you know, like, let's say, for example, there's a missionary from England come to see you, and he's got a 15-year-old son who's not exactly singing the songs in the choir like he used to, who is like, wants to be the king of the castle, and he isn't. And so he'll do anything he can in order to become king of the castle. Well, his dad somehow has got to try and trust the Bible in a different way entirely from the way that he trusted it 6 months ago when all this started. Suddenly the scriptures look wholly different now to me. When he says to me now that he won't give me more than I can bear, I think, wow, you really think I can bear this much? He says, yeah. With me? Yeah, no problem. My burden is light. My yoke is easy. Really? Wow, it's an amazing thing to find out that he has that much faith in you. Like, well, it's not really faith in me, but it's faith in himself to be able to do something through me. And suddenly things look very different. And suddenly people outside my faith community notice something different. Because I'm not ashamed of the gospel or of my failings as a dad, as a man, as a husband. One guy, his brother his brother was killed in December, and he asked me to pray for him. Well, that doesn't tend to happen to Daniel and his I've memorized 250,000 scriptures and can squirt them out willy-nilly. When I was doing that kind of stuff, it wasn't happening. Anyway, it is 5 to 7 and one person is leaving at 7. Who was that? That was you, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd much rather stay.
I'd much rather you stay, especially since you have Jewish family, but you'll need to fill out the form so we can stay in touch with you.
Okay.
When you go, we'll play one of the videos from ifoundshalom.com, which is one of our two primary evangelistic websites. Chosen People Ministries are like, we're 125 years old this year. We were started up by a Hungarian rabbi who discovered that Jesus was the Messiah and wanted other Jewish people to know the same truth. And we're really pretty much doing the same thing. We were once called the Church Mission to the Jews, to the American Board of Missions to the Jews, then we changed our name to Chosen People Ministries. We actually took the name of the newsletter that Leopold Cohen, who founded the ministry, he produced a newsletter in the 1800s with that title, and so we chose that. And in the UK, it's my strong belief that I say we're a gospel mission to Jewish people, which is like trying to sell pork pies at a bar mitzvah. But we are the Jewish mission that love the church. I am one unusual character. I know a lot of stuff about Jewish mission, but I'm only one. And I can't, my wife doesn't want me to have many wives, or like Abraham to say that she's my sister. So I can't I can't marry into another Jewish family to build relationships. That would be awkward and illegal. But I strongly believe God has chosen the church to reach the world. That's you guys. And he gives the church, and I use this word very loosely, gifts of evangelists. And I think that's what I am, and that's what I want to help you with. And because Jewish mission is such a, so I think I've already explained, 98% of Jewish people don't think Jesus is the Messiah. Those of you who are going to stay are going to find out why. Those who are going to leave early aren't.
Don't make me feel bad.
Oh, no. Jewish guilt.
Bruce will tell her.
Bruce can tell you. Anna, you can have the PowerPoint. So it'll be fine. Plus, apparently, it's being, I hate to think what people are going to think when they see this. Anyway. They say that Jewish people are like everybody else, only more so. And since you're a person,
Bye, Carol.
Carol knows how to reach Jewish people. The first thing you've got to do is know some. The second thing you've got to do is live a life that is shaped by knowing Jesus and obeying Jesus. Knowing him and obeying. So it's all very well to know him and know about him, but if you don't obey him, no one's going to notice. So Abraham was considered righteous because his faith manifested in some crazy act. Just that's why I taught Genesis 22. Genesis 22 on Sunday, and I was telling Laura that I've been very struck by just how dysfunctional this man was. Like really, like his, just, yeah. God chose him, he made promises to him. You know, if he pretty much, he like Peter, he leapt out the boat. Okay, I'm going to leave everything. And the next minute he said, because I trust God. And the next minute he's saying, pretend you're my sister. And then he profits from that relationship. And that's written down in the Bible. Like when I read the Bible for the first time, I was amazed to see how a patriarch could be described like that in the book. Is this some Christian translation? Maybe, I'm sure the Jewish translation must be more favourable. It isn't. It's the same. But Jewish people are frightened. They have such high regard for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they probably have never even thought about this. This is a great question to ask. Like, there are loads of great questions you can ask Jewish people. Has anyone ever taken the time to explain to you why Gentiles like me think that Jesus is the Messiah? Has anyone ever taken the time to explain to you why Gentiles like me think that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah? To which there are only two answers, yes or no. If they say yes, you can ask them, so what did you think when that was explained to you? What do you believe? What do you believe? If they say no, you can say, guess what? Now Daniel, fine. Now Daniel has got his chance. Would you like me to explain to you why, as a Gentile, I believe that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah? No? Okay. Yes? Whoopee, whoa, this is the time. But if they say no, this is what you have to do. Okay. If you ever watch people doing evangelism and you see someone trying to persuade somebody else about Jesus or blah, 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 and they're negative, and you watch the body language of the other person, they're they go in harder and harder, because the tip in Israel, speaking English louder won't make things better.
Any country.
You can't even speak English anyway. But you see the same thing. You see exactly the same thing when people do evangelism. People push and they push, essentially they turn the volume up louder and louder as if somehow the person is definitely can't hear or they're stupid. And then when the person says no, they're like totally deflated and exhausted. Because you've put so much into it. And how can they be so foolish? And don't worry, you're in good company, Daniel. Luther was exactly the same. When Luther couldn't convince Jewish people that they were wrong about Jesus, he turned on the Jews in a horrible way. We'll look at that in the PowerPoint. So, if I don't get to the PowerPoint, it would be a bit of a waste of time, like sitting there, poor man. Do you want to play one of the first videos? Because I think you'll begin to see why the way I'm trying to engage you in this journey. You'll see this is the way that we engage people on the internet.
Here's what you need to do.
Okay.
You've got to first shave your head. You dress all in black. You've got to wear a white robe, eat only kosher foods. You've got to become a vegetarian. You face Jerusalem. You've got to face India when you pray. You pray only in Hebrew, and you grow a nice big beard. And if you do all of those outward cultural things, you'll discover the God of the universe. And I'm thinking, this is crazy that someone thinks that they can force their culture on God and that God's going to be impressed by what you wear, what direction you face when you pray, what you eat, and all these sorts of things. It seemed to me that if there was a God out there who could be known, he should be able to be recognized no matter where I face, no matter how I'm dressed, because he's God. Growing up, we always understood that we had our Bible and the Gentiles had their Bible, the New Testament, and that they were two completely separate books. Because the only people I knew who were believers in Jesus were all people in our public school who were Italian Catholic, I imagined that Jesus was Italian. And so the understanding that he's actually Jewish was a shock. And then to hear that the New Testament was written by Jews, I couldn't believe it. My expectation was that the New Testament...
So, here's a nice Jewish boy who thinks that Jesus is Italian.
Really?
And there's another, lots of people think that Jesus is an Italian who lives in the Pope, who's like the Pope, who lives in the Vatican. Lots of people think that. That's what they think. So if you then go pummeling, like if you're trying to talk to a Jewish person about Jesus and that's their presupposition, well, you're just going at it entirely the wrong way. Because you've got to deal with the first thing you've got to deal with is he thinks that Jesus is an Italian, is the Pope.
That's a lie.
I know it's not. I know it's a lie.
I'm sorry.
But it's what we all believe lies,
Yeah.
and they shape us. And especially if we want to be part of a group, you've got to. When I first started doing Jewish mission, a Jewish guy got saved. Basically, he came around to my house for like 6 months, arguing with me he came to church so that he could come to my house and eat my wife's food and then argue with me. But he's a believer now. He's been a believer. Gosh, it was bipolar nightmare. Like he was, oh my gosh, he was such a nightmare. But God did an amazing thing in terms of like making me and my wife hospitable, and I loved. He was like this massive practice thing for me. Where I was just batting. It was like a wall that I kicked a football against. And he didn't care because he just wanted the food. Anyway, when he got saved, he stopped wearing his tzitzit tassel. You know the tassels that Jewish people wear. So he started coming to my church, and I said to him one day, I said to him, "What's happened to you? Like, where's your yarmulke and your tzitzit? You're like a goy now." I said, I didn't save you for this. Kind of la la la. And he said, I don't. And then he said, he said the most wonderful thing to me. He said to me, I don't need those things. I've got Jesus now. He's all I need. you can have them. I say, fine. And I took them and I put them on and I went to Stamford Hill. I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't wear a yarmulke because I know that's not in the Bible. So anyway, but I didn't know what I was doing. The man came up to me and he said, where's your hat? And I thought, I said, it blew off. It's windy. Because like if you're Jewish, like keeping your hat on, it's kind of, so people are quite impressed if you see my yarmulkes, they stay on, they're magic. Anyway, so the guy says, it blew off. And he says, no, why, really? What's happened to your yarmulke? I said, no, it blew off in the wind. And I realized the curiosity was killing him. So I said, well, you show me where the yarmulke is in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, and I'll go and buy one. And that got me started that's how I got really talking to these guys. First time was actually just a random silly joke in the back of a church. So, and then you get to know them, you've got to get to know the person there. Some of the guys wanted to sell yarmulkes. One guy dragged me to a shop, bought me a yarmulke, planted on my head. Others actually are interested. Why? And some think you're crazy. But you've got to figure out who the person is that you're talking to. So we can, I just thought it was useful to stop it at that point. And you think, oh, okay, so how's this guy going to get? So he already, like he's saying, he was already, you can see, he's already thinking it's ridiculous to try and get to know the God of the universe by eating food and pointing in the same way and dressing. He was already like, that was the thing. A good question to ask him might have been like, how do you think we can know God? Because guess what? How do you think we can know God? How do you know God? Through his revelation, rock, Bible, and through the experience of the Holy Spirit bringing that rock to life. And now you can talk about the Holy Spirit in the Bible with the Jewish guy. Oh, come on, brilliant. Carry on.
Was like my grandparents had told me. It was a book on how to persecute the Jews,
Oh, this is what
and something you should stay away from. Of course, when you're told you should stay away from something, curiosity gets the best of you, and you've got to see it. When I opened the New Testament, I was expecting to find a handbook on how to persecute the Jews. My grandparents had warned me that it was written by people who killed the Jews. That's what I was expecting to see, and yet when I'm opening it, I'm reading a story written by Jews about Jewish people. The New Testament was a fascinating book. And so as I opened this book in the library, I kind of looked around, made sure that none of my friends had seen me taking a Christian Bible off the shelf. And I opened it, here's the first sentence. It says, this is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So 3 people are mentioned, and they're all Jewish. I was very shocked. And as I continued to read, I'm reading the story of a Jewish man who was born in a Jewish village, in a Jewish country, and one day walks into a synagogue and announces that he is the Messiah. The more I read the words of Jesus, the more I became attracted to him. It was as beautiful as anything I had ever read in any other part of the Bible. As I came to faith that Yeshua, that Jesus was the Messiah, it was clear that that was the most Jewish thing I could do. This is not a person who's a renegade to our people. This is the one who was promised in our Bible, the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. It is astonishing. If you would just read that chapter, just without the Bible being around it, you would say, oh, this is some Christian Bible. This is Jesus. When you realize, though, that it's in the middle of our Bible, our Jewish Bible. When I first came to faith, I dared not tell my father, because this is a time period in the 1970s when there were lots of gurus and cults, and he was very concerned about me getting involved in some crazy sect and going off someplace. So I waited for months, and when I finally told him, he was very skeptical. On his own then, he started to read about Jesus as well. About 1.5 years later, I told him that the fellow who wrote one of the books that he had read, that this fellow was giving a lecture in the city of New York. And he agreed to come out to hear that person. And one of the most amazing moments of my life was the speaker said, would everyone here who is a Jewish believer in Jesus, would you raise your hand? And I raised my hand. My father also raised his hand. And I looked over and I said, Pop, he didn't say would all the Jews raise their hand. He said, would all the Jewish believers in Jesus raise their hand? And my father looked over and he said, yes, I heard what he said. The decision to come to faith in Jesus as the Messiah was not something that was a momentary lark. It wasn't something that was a passing fad. And I could see changes in myself that I knew were not from within myself. I had kind of tapped in to a truth for our Jewish people that was very powerful.
Do you want to cue up the Israel Cohen one while we're about it? There we go. Oh, my sister came to faith maybe like less than a year ago, and that's the first time I've watched that since. And it's just an amazing thing when someone just. I mean, I've been a believer 13 years, roughly speaking. First one in my family. And one of the things that I think can encourage us as evangelists is just remembering the joy of seeing somebody when they first come to faith. Like my sister made a profession of faith 4 or 5 years ago. Ho, ho, ho. Jesus is not just for Christmas. But now she's like going to church, reading the Bible. She's saying to me, I'm going to this group on a Thursday. They teach the Bible. I'm asking a million questions. Is that really going to annoy them? I said, no. It's quite, that is just the most. I say to you, you're a gift, literally a gift from God for them. When you've been a believer like 30 years, 40 years, and you get someone who's just like an adult, someone gets saved when they're 40 or 30 or 40, 50. If you know one of these, oh my gosh, it's just the best. Because like he said, it's not just as a lark. So I hope that story is, it will show you why, like Isaiah 53 is, we have a book called Isaiah 53 Explained. I think in the US we've given away 300,000 of these through social media, through the funny little adverts that pop up. You know when you Google white, when you're looking for another white cardigan or a new pair of jeans with holes in. And then for the next like 10 or 20 years, jeans with holes in come up on the side of your screen, or white cardigans. You know those. This Facebook advertising. That's what we use to promote this book. And we just give them away because this is like a little mobile evangelist. It'll tell the Jewish person, first of all, that it's a Jewish person writing it, that they didn't think that Jesus was the Messiah either, how they grew up, why they'd never read Isaiah 53, and then they'll takes them through Isaiah 53 and then tells them what to do at the end, which is say a prayer, go to church.
Is that Isaiah 53?
This is
The whole thing?
The whole thing's based just on that. And the reason being is because it's such an amazing testimony. So the next story that you're going to hear is from a guy called Israel Cohen, and you'll see, and these so Chosen People Ministries is about us giving Jewish people the excuse to explore. Because you remember that Moti said that he imagined that the New Testament was a handbook for the persecution of Jewish people, that it was an anti-Semitic book, and that so he opens Matthew and he thinks, Abraham, Jesus, Abraham, son of David. Like even a kind of fairly biblically illiterate Jew knows that the Messiah and David are somehow connected. They wouldn't be able to tell you it's 2 Samuel 7, 16? 2 Samuel 7, that's good enough, isn't it? They wouldn't be able to tell you the Bible reference, but they kind of in their subconscious, they'd know the difference. They'd know there's a connection. So, but there are preconceptions, and you might be the only Bible-believing Christian the Jewish person ever meets. And certainly you're the only one who's had this training course, because I've never done it this way before today anyway. So when you go to Israel, and you meet Jewish people, or even when you meet Jewish people in the course of your, on the way home, on the bus, like you were telling me about the person you met, you know, it's remarkable when you're willing to share your faith with Jewish people. It's remarkable how they turn up to fix your computer, to help you with this, to need help in that area. It's remarkable.
I heard about some of these guys like John the Baptist. He's a Baptist. I found out later on he's Jewish. St. Paul, Jewish? Yeah, Jewish. St. Peter, how can anybody by the name of St. Peter be Jewish? Guess what? I found out they're all Jewish. You know, I grew up in Philadelphia in a Jewish neighborhood. On the other side of the street, that was mostly Gentiles. These poor Gentiles, they would worship a statue. Some of those people had statues in their lawns. At the age of 8 years old, I joined the Cub Scouts, which is part of the Boy Scouts. They had they still probably have this today, a magazine that's called Boys Life Magazine. And in that magazine, they had the instructions on how to build a crystal radio. I was so excited. It was like I was in heaven with this radio that worked. I would rush home from school and put on the earphones, and I was hearing these people talking about Jesus on the short wave. They were like, at the same time, I was preparing for my bar mitzvah, and my rabbi told me, never believe in Jesus and never read the New Testament. That's a Gentile book, and Jesus is for the Gentiles. I joined the Navy in 1960 and wound up in a drill hall with 400 guys. Now, this is the first time in my life I was ever away from my mother and father. They taught me how to smoke a cigarette. You know, I was coughing like crazy. They said, real sailors drink whiskey. And that was burning my throat. I did it because I wanted to be a real sailor. I wound up getting drunk every night. Wound up going out with women that I shouldn't be doing. Sometime deep down inside of me, I was saying, man, this doesn't feel right. Something's wrong here. This doesn't seem right. You see, when you join the Navy, I don't know if they do this today anymore, but this was back in 1960. We were naked and had our hair shaved, and then we went through the line to get our uniforms and stuff. And at the end of the line, they said Catholic, Protestant, or Jewish. So they gave you a Bible. I had my Tanakh. I had my Jewish scriptures. I don't know what you do with the Bible. I thought, you know, it might be like a rabbit's foot, good luck charm, or maybe it'd be like my grandmother's chicken soup. Anytime I was sick, my grandmother said, have some matzo ball soup, have some chicken soup. I said, will it help? She said, it couldn't hurt, you know? I said, well, I have a Bible. Will it help? Well, it couldn't hurt, you know? One of the sailors that I was with in the Navy said to me, you're Jewish, right? I said, yeah. Do you have a Bible? I said, sure, I have a Bible. They gave it to me when I joined the Navy. He said, let me see your Bible. And he turned in my Bible to Isaiah chapter 53. He said, here, read this. I read the whole chapter of Isaiah 53. I said, wait a minute. This sounds like those folks across the street. This sounds like the Gentiles. This sounds like what I was hearing on the shortwave. They made a mistake. They gave me New Testament. And my rabbi told me never read the New Testament. You better take this because this is for you. This is not my Bible. I said, no, look, Hebrew Publishing Company. Hebrew Publishing Company. This is crazy. What's Jesus doing in my Bible? He said, well, he's your Messiah. He's my Messiah. I was shocked, and he said, would you like to read about that in the New Testament? I said, well, I can't read the New Testament because my rabbi told me never read the New Testament. And he looked around over here, and he looked over here, and he says, I'll make a deal with you. If you don't tell your rabbi that you read the New Testament, I won't tell him either. I thought about that for a minute. Okay, but I was scared. I thought lightning was going to strike me. I actually thought I was going to be struck by lightning. I expected it to be a Gentile book. I expected it to take place in Rome with a bunch of popes talking about Catholic things and statues. What surprised me is how Jewish the New Testament really is. It's the most Jewish book I ever read. The more I read the scriptures, the more I was praying, I realized that inside I was not clean. Inside I had all kinds of anger. I was getting drunk every night. I was going with the women. I was smoking 3 packs of unfiltered Pall Mall a day, coughing like crazy. I was making pretend like I enjoyed it. I didn't want to make pretend anymore. I didn't want to live that way anymore. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the barracks, big barracks. And I had a blanket all the way over, and the light was shining on the New Testament, and I prayed, you know, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Lord, Jesus, I'm here. I want to believe in you, and I went to bed. May 16, 1961, came to faith in the Messiah. That's just so important in my life. It's a moment that totally, completely changed and revolutionized my life. Even if I was the very last person on earth, Jesus would still have died for me. And I am confident that when I die, I'll go to be with him.
So,
A biblical-based mission to Jewish people that uses social media to do its evangelism. And then we make ourselves available to the Jewish people. That's my son coming in to get the car keys and going out again. And that's, you know, that's like, it has been my job to make mistakes for you. I've learned that failure is your friend. That it is the best teacher. Failure and humility are a powerful combination. They are otherworldly, almost by definition. And so but you can't. It's very difficult to make mistakes if you're like the guy that waits in the harbour to sail his boat out on the perfect day that never comes. So many times it has been my failures and my apologies that have opened opportunities for the gospel. Very rarely has it been my brilliance. And actually, even when I have been brilliant, and even when it has produced things, it's a very empty sort of thing in the end. Because because then you're carrying a burden that you're not supposed to carry. If my sister believes because I've articulated the gospel in a brilliant way and shown her 27 fulfilled prophecies, and I've done that, she's trusting in me, not in Jesus, not in the life, death, and resurrection of the Messiah. And I don't want that. Let me give you some information. Oh yeah, I told you a little bit about that. There are 2 nasty viruses in Christianity that I can tell you about. One is called replacement theology. This nasty virus makes people think that God has given up on the Jewish people and replaced the Jewish people in God's plan with the church. So there's no Jew or Gentile. Everyone's one in Christ Jesus. So it doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or not anymore. God's finished with the Jewish people. Then there's an even more, and if you talk to Christians who believe that, they'll say they don't believe it. So it's one of those nasty viruses that people have, but they can't see in themselves. There is another virus which I find even more unpleasant. It's called dual covenant theology.
The what?
Dual covenant theology. I thought this was fairly obvious and that people knew this, but I've mentioned this a few times. People have had it. It's a surprise. It is the idea that God made a covenant with Abraham so every Jewish person has a place in the world to come. It's a rabbinic position that says that every Jewish person has been chosen and that when they die they all go to the next world, to all go into eternity. Well, if that's true, Jesus didn't need to die. And he didn't need to rise from the dead. He didn't need to go. He didn't need to be despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, familiar with suffering.
There were no needs for his stripes to heal anybody. It didn't matter that we all, like sheep, had gone astray, but each has turned to that. None of that mattered. But it only mattered for the Gentiles. It didn't matter for the Jews. The unfortunate biblical inconvenience of that is that Isaiah is addressed to Jewish people and not to Gentiles. If you read the chapter 1. So, anyway, just in case you want an Old Testament reason for the New Testament clarity, that to the Jew first is who I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of salvation to the Jew first and then for the Gentile.
Salvation of the Jew.
To the Jew first. Jesus. To the Jewish people first. That's what the gospel is for. Later on, as you scan through the beginning of Romans, you'll find that the judgment will begin with the Jewish people. That's why they need the gospel as a priority, because judgment will begin with them. In Romans chapter 9, Paul says that his heart breaks. I speak the truth in Messiah, I'm not lying. I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart. I wish that I could be cursed and cut off from Messiah for the sake of my brothers, those of my own race. I think Paul was fairly moved by the idea of doing Jewish mission. Later on in Romans, the Gentiles are supposed to come to faith, and as they do so, to make the Jewish people jealous. Again, I ask, did the Jewish people stumble as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. I don't know if you know, but it's pretty difficult to make someone envious if they don't know you. If they don't know what you've got, they can't really be envious of it. The word in the Greek is a really up close and personal word. It's not a detached thing. It's not the looking out at in the car park at the Infiniti Q60 and thinking, I wish I had that car kind of envious. It's the Cain and Abel kind of envy in a good way. And then there is the promise that one day all Israel will be saved. Although I didn't start off as a Jewish missionary, I was driven by the fact that so few people wanted to talk to Jewish people about Jesus. I think it's the pork pie and the bar mitzvah thing that puts people off. I don't know why. It's either true or it's not. And if it's true, then it's the only truth that matters. One day, all Israel will be saved, it says very clearly. So the idea is that God hardened the hearts of the Jewish people in the same way that he hardened Pharaoh's hearts, in order that the gospel would go out to every nation and then come back. And then in Zechariah we're told that one day they'll look upon him who they have pierced and mourn for him like a firstborn son. And on that day a fountain will be opened that will wash the sins in a single day of all Israel. And then there's this great, at the end of Zechariah, there's this great eternal celebration of tabernacles where every tongue, tribe and nation. And then you look at the end of Isaiah and you see where John is getting his pictures for this new heaven and this new earth. And we see, because we're taught the Bible, I'm reliably informed in this church, we see all this. The rabbis are not teaching the Bible. So, what's next? Some interesting things about Jewish people, 16 million. Like, really 16 million? What's all the fuss about? That's what I want to know. 400,000 in the UK. But 16 million, it's such an insignificant number. Why on earth do you think, why is there such a fuss, do you think, over the Jewish people? Apart from the fact that God promised that they would always be around. Destroy the Jewish people and you prove God to be a liar. I find that strangely encouraging. Out of the 16 million Jewish people in the world, a little less than 1% believe. And then here, my challenge to you. I may well be the Jewish missionary, but 91% of Jewish people who come to faith in Jesus do so through the witness of a Gentile friend. I'm here to help you. Go and share the gospel to the Jew first, beginning in Jerusalem and Samaria and into all the world. Well, there are lots of different kinds of Jews. I'll give you the PowerPoint, and you can, if you're interested, you can look at it. From ultra-Orthodox, which are my favourite guys, I'm a secular Jew who loves the Orthodox. It's a bit weird. Most secular Jews don't like the Orthodox. In Israel, so this is a useful thing to know if you have a baby going to Israel, that in the US and in the UK, there's a respect for the Orthodox because they're so serious about being Jewish. In Israel, there's virtually no respect for the religious because they use their religion to get out of so many different things, claim benefits, not do national service, la 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 la. So it's very different. You'll find secular Jewish people very willing to be critical of Jewish people. If you talk to a Jewish person, I think, like a secular Jewish Israeli, they're happy for you. That you can ask them. You can ask really direct questions, because they don't want to be like the religious guys, because they don't like that manifestation of God. And so you can talk. I'd love to hear what secular Israelis say when you say to them, okay, if that isn't the way to get to God, how do you get there? I'd love to know what they say. You might even be surprised by the kinds of conversations you might have. Anyway, okay, so this is what most Jewish people believe. There's a God and he's worthy of worship. Hello, Jewish person. We do share the same belief that there is a God and he's worthy of worship. How do you worship him? How does that work out for you? What does that look like in practice? How has that changed the way that you live? Like if you have someone who's open and spiritually searching, these are the kinds of questions that I think, and I've experienced actually, you can very quickly tell whether the person is spiritually open or not. And you won't spend your time bashing them with 107 prophecies about Jesus that means it must be the Messiah.
But the secular Jew is going to tell you he doesn't go to church, he didn't do anything. So he's going to look at you with a blank face.
Right, exactly.
And
so
if you say anything about Isaiah 53, he's never read it.
No, and you know, like somewhere maybe in Corinthians talks about Israel. Peter, somewhere in Peter, can't remember where. Somewhere in Peter it says these things were written down for us as believers, and somewhere in Corinthians it says that the experience of the Jewish people were written down for us as a warning. The scriptures, in many ways, are more for it's this business of community discipleship evangelism. They're there. Like what has kept Israel going and Motti going is not the experience, their encounter with God. Like literally, Felix was in the ER, and I thought he could be dead, and I prayed like without any. I was not so agnostic. I was pretty much praying, God, if you're real, show me you. Because I'd asked him. The day before I went to church, I listened to this guy do this, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, for 45 minutes, my goodness. And this, you're a sinner. And it's like I didn't know the difference between being convicted of my sin and, because there's no way he could have said that for like 45 minutes, but that's what it felt like. And I left the church and I was like, no, I like Philip Yancey's God, What's So Amazing About Grace, I've been reading that. And I said, so I went to bed and I said, in my head, I said, show me you're in control and I'm not. And I'll believe in you, but I've got to know you're real if I'm going to believe in you. I can't believe in a fake God. Who needs a chocolate teapot? No one. Good night. I don't know if I said chocolate teapot, but I thought it. I don't know if he knew that I was thinking it, but that's pretty much what I was thinking. I remember also saying, I'm not going to jump off a cliff into the arms of a non-existent God. Are you mad? These are very humble things for I didn't know anything about the creature-creator divide at this point. I was just basically having a go at him. And I went to bed, and the next day, Felix was in ER, could have been dead. I didn't know whether he was or he wasn't. and I prayed. And when I was praying for the ambulance and the wheels and the windscreen wipers and the driver and the doctors and the roads and everything else and blah, 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 and when I finished, couldn't think of anything else to pray for, I suddenly realized that if ever there was a better demonstration of that I wasn't in control, I'd asked him the day before, show me I'm not in control, because I thought I pretty much was.
Showed you.
I was Jewish, but like not a Bible reading Jew, so I knew about Abraham and Isaac, but like notionally, I never knew. They say God tested Abraham and said to him, take your son, your only son who you love, to the top of the mountain. He literally did that to me, because I idolized that boy in the same way that Abraham had forgotten that the promise wasn't the son, but the promise came from the covenant and from the God who made it. And that Abraham, it says, reasoned that he could lift him from the dead and continue the process. It was like, we often look to the gifts and not the giver of the gifts. Anyway, so I finished praying for that, and I was like, that's weird. And then I said, if he dies, then the only way I can imagine getting through that is if this is real, and then and this weird chicken wing came around me like this, and then disappeared, and then I just felt peaceful for like 2 hours. I didn't even go to the hospital. I was just, God's real, he knows me, he hears my prayers, and he answers them. Why? Well, like, what is the point of, like, how's he got so much time on his hand? Now, because my God was so, like, is it J.B. Phillips, Your God's Too Small? There's a book from back in the day. My conception of what a God could be was so tiny that he must be really bored to be messing around with me. But it's effortless for him. But at the same time, he cares intensely for me, like Israel said. He knew that even if he was the last person on earth, God would still have died, Jesus would still have died for him on the cross. That's just, so, and then that when, and I thought I was the only one that this has happened to, and when you talk to Jewish people, it all says, they all put their fist up to God and say, show me you're real, show me you're in control, blah, 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 and then he does. And then they often become Jewish missionaries. It's pretty much the story. Anyway, that's a little bit of it, because I realized I hadn't really told you about how I came to faith. And then when I got into Jewish mission because I had my own business, and I just basically allocated Thursdays to doing evangelism, and I did it in my local area without even thinking, just talking on the streets with people. I didn't realize my neighbor, because I'm a bit you have the evidence of my foolishness. It never crossed my mind that if I started doing street evangelism where I lived, that people who I lived near would walk past me. So like when they first started walking down the road, I'd be like, oh, I'll just go into my book and get a tract, and okay, I'm not ready for that. And I just said to God, you give me a few good conversations in the first year and I'll carry on. Because I never imagined anybody would want to have a spiritual conversation. I never would have. But so much for my plans. Anyway, and then so I started doing work with Jews for Jesus in the afternoon because no one else was doing street evangelism. So I put my Jesus Made Me Kosher t-shirt on and walked around Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. I don't know why that didn't work, looking back on it. Yeah. Like I say, I've made a lot of mistakes. I wouldn't undo any of them because failure has become a very good teacher to me. Yeah. So, what do most Jewish people believe? There's a God worthy of worship. People are basically good. Oh, you can see how that might not be exactly the same as Christianity. And nobody really knows what happens in eternity. Oh yeah, there is another little... So, if you're talking to a Jewish person, you have the first one in common, and then you've got to be able to explain why Christianity is different from the other two. So, if we think about people are basically good, well, memorize. Daniel can tell you about Romans 7. The good I don't do the good I should do. It's bad stuff. That's what I do so easily. So, la 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 la. You think people? I think people are basically good, really. Okay. Well, I'll tell you about me. I know the good I should do, and I'm not much good at doing it. I know the bad things. I know the annoying things that I do to my wife that she's told me a million times not to do, that I continue to do. I know how I go and preach a sermon on being patient through suffering, and then scream at the old lady who doesn't move fast enough out of the car park in the church. Okay, yeah. Come down, we'll pray for you afterwards. I didn't know. You looked like an old woman the way you were driving.
Well, then he's Jewish. What was wrong with your son?
He took he got into a locked drawer and took my wife, after she gave birth, was a bit depressed. Well, she wasn't depressed, she was a bit sad and exhausted, and so she felt depressed, and they gave her drugs, antidepressants, which she never took because she was paranoid about taking them. And they went in a drawer, and we left them there. We didn't know what to do with them, and literally the day before we've been thinking, what should we do? And I was I don't know. What do you do with these drugs? I don't know. Well, I'll just keep them in the drawer, lock them away, and then the next day he ate them. And the weird thing was that actually he had been with another kid. There were two kids in our front room, both like 2 years old, round a pile of pills, with red pills with red around their mouth, and sort of wished them. The other kid was Jewish as well. It was very embarrassing. The weird thing was, yeah, this is quite a good story actually, now I remember it. So the weird thing was that when I got to when I got to the hospital, they said to me, so I had basically the English version of Laura. I was saying to her, my name's Simon Lissack, and they were like confused. Lissa, and it's like, oh, that's right. So his first name is Felix. So to try and explain, his name is Felix Lissack, and it was like the person was just useless. So I said to the person, because I am odd, I said, maybe you're looking on the wrong. He definitely had. She had the right, or he or she had the right name in the end, and they couldn't find him. So I said, maybe he's died, and you're looking on the wrong list. At this point, they were like, if there was a button under the desk, they were like pressing it for security. And as I was saying this, the woman who I'd sat down next to in church for the first time with the sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner for 45 minutes, came round the corner and said, hello Simon, do you want to see Felix? He's fine. And she had just, and she's a midwife supervisor and 2 doctors she'd never seen came to get her and took her to the kids. And so, she just appeared just as I was saying, if he's dead. It's almost as if there's a sovereign God who knows us and orders our steps in order that Acts 17 we might find him and know him, and because he's there for us. And he doesn't need anything from me. He doesn't need to be served by human hands. I mean, I'd never read it. I didn't, even when I went home, the scales fell off my eyes. It was then when I read it later, I thought, wow, that happened to me, and that's so weird. Anyway, people are basically good. Let me just go back to something useful. People are basically good. Really, Megan? You think people are basically good? Yes, Simon, I do. Is that been your life experience? You find being good is easy and something that comes natural to you? Yeah. Okay, now you know the person doesn't either lying to you or doesn't know themselves. You know, so you just learned something really valuable about this person. So they say, no, I'm fine. So I said, well, from my point of view, it's the good, I don't do the good I should, it's the evil I should not do, that's what I do. But you're a Christian. Oh man, really? But Megan, what do you think a Christian is? Oh, he's a good person. No. And then this is the difficult thing about evangelism, especially for me. So anyway, you can work out the more difficult, and people are basically good is a real gift because you've got one text. That's all the text you need. You don't need anything else, just that one text. And your experience of shouting at the woman in the car park on the way out of church, not necessarily the pastor, but some of the deacons. What do most, you see, and every time I put in brackets most, because it's not, I'm not telling you this is what Jewish people believe. I'm telling you this is some stuff that some Jewish people believe. You've got the Jew in front of you, the Jewish person in front of you. You've got to figure it out for yourself. All Gentiles are Christians. You know this one? Do you know this is what they think? Basically, you're either Jewish or you're not. Us and them. Because, especially since the Holocaust, we've built a culture based on survival and protection and stuff like that. Very us and them. All Gentiles are Christians. You don't have to, you know, all Gentiles, well, I can't say it. It seems, it's almost as if there's some kind of spiritual battle taking place in which the God of this age has blinded people to the truth. I don't know, I've read that somewhere in the Bible. It's almost as if it's almost as if the devil doesn't want Jewish people just to consider the claims of the gospel for themselves. It's almost as if you do Jewish mission, you are, I mean, it is my personal experience that very often doing Jewish mission, you feel like you're basically just walking straight into Satan's face and spitting at him. And if I'd known that's what I was doing when I started, I probably would have been too frightened to do it. But like Jeremiah, I can say, Lord, you deceived me and I was deceived. Like I just wanted to talk to people about Jesus because I thought it would be the best way of getting out of talking about Jesus. I thought it would just turn into it could just be a little thing that was personal to me and not a thing that applied to every single human being that ever lived. And my plans be, anyway. Christians worship three gods. Very, very common, because, think about it. Esther. Yes, the Christians, we're Jewish, we believe in how many gods, Esther? You're supposed to say one God, Rabbi. And do it with some reverence. Esther, how many gods do we believe in? She said, for the benefit of the tape, she said, one God, Rabbi. I say to you, the Christians, how many do they believe in?
3 in 1.
3 gods. The Christians believe in 3 gods. We believe in one God. The Christianity is for the Gentiles. We're going to stick to the one God because we know the one God. How easy is that to understand? You don't need it. It's just easy. Oh yeah. And anyway, Esther, you can't. If you want to stop being Jewish, go ahead. You can't come to synagogue anymore. Your family will kick you out. Then what will you have? And they won't ever accept you because you're Jewish. Everyone knows the New Testament is an anti-Semitic book. It's pretty much a manual on how to persecute Jewish people. Come and have some chicken soup, and let's talk about the old days. See how it works? Oh. Oh yeah.
There's many.
Yeah. Christians are all is the lie in this story. Some Christians, amazingly, worship a Jewish God and hate the Jews. Tell me about that. Although it is true, equally true, that to be a self-hating Jew doesn't exactly put you in the minority. What do most Jewish people believe about the Messiah? King from the House of David, we talked about that. Torah observant, written oral, we don't have time to talk about that. Rebuilds the temple in Jerusalem. You may have not noticed he hasn't done that so far. Gathers the people of Israel from all over the world. Well, no, he hasn't done that. Brings peace to the world. Okay, is Jesus as Messiah? No, because he hasn't rebuilt the temple, he hasn't gathered all the people into Israel, and he hasn't brought peace to the world. Let's go and light the Shabbat candles. Do you see how, it's such a superficial understanding of the Messiah? When I'm with the Orthodox, sometimes I'm talking to them, and there are, back in I think around 1100 AD, and there was a strong understanding within Judaism, which was then only Orthodox, that there was a Moshiach, a Messiah ben David, and a Messiah ben Joseph. Ben Joseph was the suffering Messiah, and Ben David was the king Messiah. And they didn't know whether it was two Messiahs. They thought it was two Messiahs. There were two Messiahs. That came from just biblical reasoning. But then, pretty much, I think by the time the Holocaust came and various other things and all the pogroms and everything else, they started abandoning. Did I tell you the story about the car? I haven't told you the story. So I was talking to some Jewish guys on a corner of a street. There was a car crash, and we were trying to work out how the car crash happened and who it was that got hit and blah, blah, blah. And we've been talking like 10, 15 minutes. You know, like men can't talk. These two can talk while they're doing the electronics over there because there's an excuse for them to talk to each other. But they're not going to go for coffee around the corner together. That would be weird. So men need something to do. So this is another thing. Like, if you're trying to do evangelism for men, they need to do something. All the ministries in the UK that do well with men, they get the men doing something, and they train the Christians in the group to talk to them about Jesus. They don't play golf, have a 2-minute talk on Jesus, which is really awkward for everyone, and then carry on playing golf like nothing happened. Anyway, I'm standing on the corner with the people, I'm talking to them. We've figured out what happened in our grand opinion. I'm part of the group. I'm part of the community. So I want to try to do some discipleship with them. And out of my mouth comes a very Daniel question. I say to them, why do you not teach Isaiah 53, Jeremiah 31, and Daniel 9 in the synagogue? And I was like, oh my gosh, I just said that out loud. And the man said to me, I don't know, you'll have to ask the rabbi. And I said, no, I'm asking you. And he said, no, he's the rabbi. This is Rabbi Schwartz here. So I say, a rabbi. So then I got to repeat the question again. Rabbi, why don't you teach Isaiah 53, Jeremiah? Are you writing this down, boys? Because there was like about 8 of them all around. It's a congregation around me. So I said, Isaiah 53, Jeremiah 31, Daniel 9. And he said to me, to cut a long story short, I don't teach anything in my synagogue that would cause my congregation to doubt. I don't teach anything because if you teach Isaiah 53 and Jeremiah 31 and Daniel 9, what you've got to explain, first of all, what the text said. He'll be pierced for our transgressions. All that, I mean, it's like, he'll be lifted up, highly exalted. That language is really unique. It's only used, the vocabulary is only ever used to describe God. And then he's despised and rejected a man like who people turn their faces from. Like, you don't want to go there, and you don't want to go there with the rabbinic ways that they massage the text to make it look like it isn't an individual when it is. That's a minefield. And then Jeremiah 31, that the actual new covenant was promised by a Jewish guy to the Jews in exile because God knew they should have known they couldn't keep it because that's why they were in exile. He said, it doesn't matter that you can't keep it. Even though I'm a faithful husband and you are not faithful wife, I'm going to be faithful and I'm going to write it on your hearts, blah, blah, blah. There'll be a new covenant. Well, you don't want to see that word appearing. So, we don't want the life, death, and resurrection appearing in Isaiah 53, Jeremiah 31, the new covenant, and then Daniel 9, that the Messiah is murdered before the destruction of the Second Temple. Sorry.
We've got
Yeah,
4
5.
minutes. We got an ad council meeting, and I just kind of wondered if people are interested in any of the resources.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm kind of interested in some of them and how we would pay for those. And
Sure. I'm sorry.
You wanted to highlight any of anybody else can stay, but some of us are going to have to go.
Yeah. Okay, so why do I come to the US? I come to the US to build support for the work in the UK. The UK church is in a sad state. As you said, have a meeting for prayer, have a meeting for evangelism. My goodness, those are not the meetings that pack the house, that's for sure. So I come to the States to build prayer. People will pray for us as a ministry. that want to partner with me and encourage. I'm trying to find people I can train to do this in the UK. I want to see that I've got churches in Jewish areas that won't share the gospel with their Jewish neighbours because they don't want to ruin the relationship. Because they often believe in this dual covenant, because no one's come and sat to them and shown them. No one's even read Isaiah, like Romans 9 to them and shown them how heartbroken Paul was over the state of their Jewish neighbours. And I want to be able to do that, and to do that I need funds, and to do that I need prayer support, and I do that I need partnership. I also want to help you when you go to Israel to actually come. Well, we've got people there who can maybe help take you out to do some form of action, or you might be there when we've got an event on that you can just be part of. Like in Israel at the moment, we're doing all sorts of events to engage people. So really the best thing on the table in terms of resources, there's the Isaiah 53 Explained book. There's some really excellent books. There's a really excellent books by Randy Newman, who wrote Questioning Evangelism, about, it kind of gives you a structured explanation of the kinds of things I've been talking about, how to avoid using food, for example, avoid talking about Jews and talk about Jewish people. I think is very helpful. Just a verbal discipline that helps you to think of the person.
One question I have is, like, there's so much about sacrifice in the Old Testament, but present Jews really no sacrifice, it seems like. So how do they get their sins forgiven? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Because they all know that they were types of Christ, so I didn't know, like.
That's a good question to even ask. I've asked that too.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask, but the answer is, so we tend to lean very heavily on Leviticus 17:11. You know, I've given you the blood as a sacrifice on the altar for the atonement of sin. But actually, I would say as a rabbi to you, God is like a father he's never going to ask you to do something you can't do. And so while we don't have the temple, we don't need to make the sacrifices. I'd point to the exile where the previous destruction of the temple when we were in exile and we couldn't do the sacrifices. And I'd point you to the text that says our mercy over sacrifice. And if you're a biblically semi-literate Jewish person, you're just going to nod and go, yeah, I'm foolish. Oh yeah, I'm really going to believe the Christian. Aren't they the ones, you know?
So should we purchase, so how would we purchase
Yeah, just,
these resources?
well, if they've got cash, you can do it by cash. If you haven't got cash, then you can, just tell you or Dave what you want, and then Dave can either send me a check or give me the cash or do something like that. It's up to you. But mostly I'd love you to sign up to the newsletter so I can stay in touch with you. I promise you my newsletters are shorter, my prayer letters are shorter than my talks.
I'd like to tell you something. I won't be long. I had a
I'm not the one who has to go.
Jewish for my children, and we got into a bad storm, and we had to get off the road into the ditch, and the heavens opened up, and I said to my boyfriend, I hit him, I said, you're going to go to hell if you don't accept Jesus. I think Jesus is talking to you. And when we got back home, he called Reverend Lockwood on 126th and got saved.
Fantastic.
And we were talking to him for 6 years. So we were talking it, the wrong way, I guess.
So
But it was scary. I mean, we're hanging down in the ditch and the trees are coming all over.
Yeah.
And then we send you one check
Yeah.
based on what people, okay, so why don't we do that, folks? I'll put
Sure.
this
Let's go.